name is Jean. I'm a physiotherapist at Ng Teng Fong General Hospital. I've been working for 3 months and currently in general medicine in an acute setting. I have studied 4 years in Australia, University of Queensland. From young, I always knew that I wanted to go to healthcare because I liked science and I liked helping people. Sure, there's many ways that I could help people, but the young me thought healthcare was the easiest and fastest way. Also, young me thought that I wanted to be a doctor, but as I grew up, I learned that being a doctor would not fulfill what I wanted to achieve in life. I knew that doctors had a large amount of content that they needed to learn, and it was something very stressful to me. I knew that doctors had a high responsibilities because they literally call the shots in the sense that they do affect whether a patient lives or dies. I thought it through. I decided that I wasn't someone who was able to bear that burden. Now, what I did know was that I wanted a job that I was active and was not desk bound. I knew that I wanted a work-life balance where I could take care of my family and develop myself outside careers. I wanted something that allowed me to have a hobby and to enjoy myself beyond work. I also knew that I wanted to make a difference in the lives of elderly. I wanted to help them age happily, not just in terms of quantity of life, but also in quality of life. Now, this gave me a bit more specific direction to where I wanted to go because I know that physiotherapy was very important for the aging population. And in some ways, while it does give me an iron rice bowl because aging population, and I could always have someone that I could serve, as well as the fact that I would never be out of a job, and it was something that was not easily replaced by artificial intelligence. Well, we do more than just strokes and sprained ankles. There's actually a wide field of study within physiotherapy, and the lesser known ones include the vestibular and ICU physiotherapy. So let's start off with vestibular. There are many patients who come into the hospital complaining of dizziness, and one thing that physiotherapists do is that we sift out cases that might be potentially vestibular cases. So vestibular issues generally have to do with imbalance of the inner ears, and the common cases that we face are crystals that are dislodged and floating in your ear, causing you dizziness. Now, physiotherapists help assess and diagnose it as well as treat it. Another thing is that physiotherapists also deal with ICU patients. So can you imagine a traumatic patient coming in after a car accident? You're hooked up to ventilators, lines all over yourself. You have like at least 5 lines in, and you're barely conscious. But physiotherapists do help treat such patients that are so fragile. Yet sometimes we are able to get them to sit up, stand up, and even at times walk, despite being that fragile with tubes everywhere. And this is of course, for their own well-being to help them recover faster. But it's amazing what physiotherapists can do in an ICU setting. I'll be lying if I said I wasn't scared or daunted. I remember sifting through loads of information before seeing the patients. You have your x-rays, your CT scans, their past medical history, their past hospital admissions. You have what's their home environment like. Is there steps into the home? Are there railings at home? Who do they live with? Do they have a helper? So you have to sift through all this kind of information and together build a story for each of your patients before you even see them, because your story of your patient would dictate how your session goes and what things to factor in when you're seeing your patients. Now, I remember during my first week when I was seeing patients, I remember chanting in my head again and again when I was seeing a patient, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, because it was that scary to me. While you cannot show it because your patient's confidence come when they see you calm and you look like you know what you're doing, so you can't show fear to your patients. But at the same time, you are accountable to whatever happens to this patient. So I would be lying if I said I was calm and confident, but it was scary. But at the end of the day, after the steep learning curve, you slowly start to get the hang of it. This wasn't during my work, but it was actually during one of my placements in a nursing home back in Australia in my 4th year. There was this lady who was previously walking with one of those walking frames with wheels, all right? And one day she fell. After she fell, she became what we call a bed-bound case, which means that she was now stuck to her bed. It's terrible for anyone to have to go through that. And she was still such a cheery lady that smiled at all of us. And I knew that I wanted to do something for her. Now, this wasn't easy because usually in nursing homes, they tend to lack manpower for physiotherapists, but we all got together and made a choice to try to squeeze whatever time we could to actually see her. And slowly, days after days, weeks after weeks, she was finally able to sit on her own. It was an achievement for her to sit, something we take for granted every single day. Such a simple thing, but it brought her to tears. I remember the moment she looked at me and spoke, "I can sit." And she looked out of the window in her room for the first time in months. Can you imagine that joy that she felt, that overwhelming self-esteem that returned to her elderly lady? To age is not to 等死, to wait for death. I wanted to be a physiotherapist for exactly moments like this, where I re-empower patients and elderly to age happily, to not spend 10 years on a bed where they do nothing. I want to be a physiotherapist that brings happiness to people and let elderly live lives in the most meaningful manner. And on that day, I did it. What is important to you? The pay? The prestige? The work-life balance? How do you want to serve? What do you want to achieve? Think carefully, because at the end of the day, there are different groups of people that we feel more inclined and have a bit more passion towards serving, and that's alright. But do explore what you want and what makes you happy at the same time, because there's no way you can survive in a profession that does not give you joy. How much emotional resilience do you have, or do you think you can develop? Because there are times where you will have to deal with grieving families, difficult family situations like people who can't financially afford treatment for their patients, or homeless people, or people with sad stories. And sometimes there are days you have a bad day, a bad moment, and you still have many patients to see. And you might just give a subpar treatment to a certain patient simply because you're feeling not up to it. But that is not something you should do. Do you have that emotional resilience to hold yourself together and give the best treatment you can to that patient? Because while this one patient might be one of many, you must remember, to that one patient, you are their only physiotherapist. While you may not hold as much responsibility as a doctor, you too hold responsibility to the quality of life and sometimes the quantity of life of a patient. Are you willing to bear that burden? And lastly, what do you have that will drive you to be an excellent physiotherapist despite all these difficulties? It's alright if you feel like healthcare might not be your cup of tea after all, or maybe not just specifically a physiotherapist. I do think that it will be a good idea if you could shadow whatever professions you are interested in, especially in the healthcare industry, so you have a better idea of what this job entails.